Hey everybody, it's Women's History Month, but we're going to be celebrating that in a very different way here at the Death Metal Library. So I welcome you to Women's Death Metal History Month. So everything on the channel this month is going to be dedicated to and highlighting some of the incredible women that play death metal. And so we're going to kick this off today with a list of 18 of my favorite all women or primarily women death metal bands, going back to some of the early ones that played this style of music. I'll later in the month give you a list of some of my favorite vocalists that happen to be women, and there will be some other surprises along the way too. Besides all of that too, all of the uploads, all the full album streams that you'll find this month are all death metal bands that feature at least one female member that just absolutely kills it. So I hope you enjoy the journey. I'm looking forward to it. So let's really celebrate some of the most powerful, incredible women that have played this style of death metal music. Sometimes they were even some of the innovators and some of the ones that, some of the progenitors of this style of music. These are women that not only play as well as the boys, but often even surpass them. And so I'm not talking about the more palatable kind of stuff that you might be familiar with, like Nervosa or Crypta. Maybe you're familiar with some of that stuff, right? And they certainly have their place for getting people into extreme metal, right? Those might be great kind of gateway bands for the next generation of fans coming through. But when I'm talking about death metal, I'm talking about low guttural vocals, right? I want to hear guitarists that really shred. I want to have blast beats that make your hair stand up on end. And so that's what we're talking about today, the real deal, the real death metal stuff. So we'll look at some different bands from all around the world, but our story today starts back in 1988 in the United States. This is when vocalist and guitarist Sharon Biskowski joined Terry Hagen and formed Derketa, the appropriately named death doom band from Pennsylvania. Derketa is a goddess in multiple mythologies and is often referred to as the goddess of death. Derketa have been widely credited as being the first death metal band composed entirely of women. They've had multiple lineups that have included many women that have become prolific in extreme metal, and even a few dudes too. And Sharon also immediately showed that women can do powerful, low guttural vocals that could be indistinguishable from what men could produce, and she's been doing it since the 1980s. It's really difficult to understate their influence, not only on the early days of extreme metal, but also for serving as some of the first role models that demonstrated that women have a place in extreme metal, and that not only is death metal genre where women belong, but also where they can flourish and become legends in their own right. While Derketa showed fans in the United States that women had their place in death metal, something similarly amazing was happening in Brazil. Three sisters, Andrea, Adriana, and Alessandra Tavares, formed a death metal band. In 1988, they called that band Phobia, but by 1990, they had changed their name to Valhalla. I'm not sure if there's ever been another death metal band formed by three sisters, let alone going all the way back to death metal's formative years. They've since put out a couple of full lengths, including 1994's excellent In the Darkness of Limb, and a few other releases, and they are still active today. Valhalla are one of my favorite Brazilian death metal bands, and they've had a number of incredible musicians in the band since their formation. Only one of the original sisters is still in the lineup, but they've had some astounding musicians since then too. For example, you really have to see some live clips of when Ariadne Souza handled both drums and vocals for them live, Chris Reifert style. If you've never tried doing gutturals while playing death metal drums before, it's not an easy feat. What an absolute monster. More on her later in the month, by the way. In 1991, three young women, including Terry Hagen from Derketa, formed what would become one of the most legendary death doom bands ever. Messick was drummer Terry, bassist Mary Belich, and guitarist and vocalist Dana Duffy. They were only active for 2 years, but this relapse signed band's 2 demos and an EP have become the stuff of legend. Making it all the more extraordinary is that the band were only teenagers during this time too. And look at the shirts they were wearing back in like 1991 and 1992. They really knew their stuff. And now they're legends in their own right, and all three of them went on to other projects. Mary also later played in Derketa and also played on a few November's Doom releases among other non-death metal projects. Demonomachy were a death metal band that were active from 1991 to 1994. They had 2 tape demos. Among their lineup was Robin Mason from Castrator, Derketa, and Gruesome alongside Jamie Avery from Amenorrhea and Dana Cosley that played live for Cynic. Yeah, that's Cynic, among others. Their sound was a lot like a raw, vicious version of Chuck Schuldner's Death. It's incredible stuff that I would absolutely love to see come to compact disc someday. It's so good, and it makes perfect sense that Robin would later play in Gruesome, a band notorious for emulating and paying tribute to death. But it's unfortunate that she doesn't handle the vocals in Gruesome because she's so incredible here. They played some sick shows, too, like Demonomacy supporting Monstrosity and Resurrection back in 1993. The Miami Herald even highlighted them. Two of the members were still teenagers at the time, and I quote from that paper, "What Avery and Demonomacy want is respect in a male-dominated genre. So far, they are getting it." Guitarist Jamie Avery is further quoted as saying, "I know that a lot of people come and see us because it is interesting to see girls playing this kind of music. But now that people know us, they're not only coming to see us play, but also to hear the music." So, in other words, the band were no longer seen as a novelty, but instead were seen as a genuinely awesome death metal band, which they were. So seriously, a reissue of the Demonomacy stuff needs to happen. Slag 9 was a short-lived death metal project that featured 3 members of Derketa, including Robin Mason after her time in Demonomacy, and Terry and Mary after Mythic came to a close. They released a demo in 1995, and that was it. There isn't a lot of information online about this band in that era, so it's another underground gem that I'd love to see resurface someday. Blasphemous Death are a death metal band from New York that were active from 1992 to 1995. They originally only had a few small print tape demos back in the early 90s, and I believe only one of those was actually released, but in 2021 they reunited. The band were composed of 3 women, including guitarist and vocalist Marlene Jimenez, who is the one that reactivated the project. I've never heard the only demo they released, so somebody put it up, because I know there's some copies of it still circulating. Back in 1994, 3 women in Montreal, Quebec, Annie Leclerc, Veronique Lambert, and Stephanie Mason, started the band November Grief. They were active until 1997 and released 2 demos in that time, including Evolution and To Live in This World of Chaos. Expect raw, high-energy death metal with an aggression that reminds me of war metal. They're really fierce recordings with some really wild vocals. I even hear some of Dystopia's crust punk influence in there. Thankfully, both recordings have been recently reissued, and the band even reformed and have been active again since 2020 following some lineup changes. Promiscuous were a death metal band from Utah that formed in 1995. They had 2 releases following a tape demo which included the full-length Monarchy of Evil in 1997, and I can't even show you the album cover from their 2000 EP because it's just a giant orgy. It's a very graphic giant orgy. Both releases are crushingly heavy and thrashy and will definitely scratch the itch if you just need some evil death metal. Promiscuous played Milwaukee Metal Fest, and through their career they played alongside many great bands like Malevolent Creation, Monstrosity, and Dimmu Borgir. In 1998, they were voted the best band in Utah by Salt Lake City Weekly. Both albums still rule, by the way. Past from Japan formed in 2003. A year earlier, they were known as Malleus Maleficarum, a name presumably inspired by the Pestilence album. It's decent raw death metal that dabbles in that brutal territory. The vocals are especially guttural and have an awesome, powerful, old-school quality to them. The songs are dynamic and even have some solos thrown in. A few years later, another all-female Japanese death metal band was formed called Vicen, who later released an EP in 2012. Vicen's stuff is high energy and uses a variety of vocal approaches. They're big on some old school grooves and have some great cymbal work when it comes to the drumming. Here's a show from back in 2019 that had both Past and Vicen supporting slam legends Vomit Remnants. So that would have been a sick show. Suspended are a death thrash band of indigenous women from New Mexico that formed in 2003. Not only are the band all women, they're largely indigenous women that are part of a wholesome movement that encourages indigenous youth to get involved in heavy metal as an alternative to drugs and violence. They have 3 releases and they're all great fun if you're down for something on the thrashier side. Rest in peace and in power to Jessica Armstrong, their former bassist that passed away earlier this year. In 2006, the band Dreaming Dead were formed in California, and they were an especially influential melodic death metal band shortly after that, with vocals that remind me a bit of Chuck Schuldner. They're led by guitarist and vocalist Elizabeth Shaw, who also plays in Cretin. I remember her really making waves when she first hit the scene. She even had a guest vocalist appearance on a Marty Friedman album, and she played in a black and death metal band called Winter Thrall for years too. I remember seeing Dreaming Dead on plenty of Sick tours during that time as well. Many incredible women have been in the band, and a handful of men too. And as a fun extra fact, Elizabeth is married to Leon Sando from Impaled, Phobia, and Exhumed. Now, let's look at an example from Italy. Putrefied Beauty were active from 2007 to 2011 and released 2 demos during that time. Here's Julia, Rosie, Nadia, and Eleonora. It's some catchy brutal death with vocals that remind me of Malika's vocals from Abnormality. Harlequin are a 3-piece experimental death metal band from California that formed in 2009 and have since put out a number of releases. They utilize a variety of vocal styles, including some in higher registers, which work well with their more experimental approach. Their guitarist and vocalist Tani is also an incredible artist. Hey, people in death metal bands, stop using AI album covers when you could license or commission something extraordinary from Tani. Seriously, I want to see some sick bands using this sick artwork as album covers. Let's make that happen. Also in 2009, 4 women from Mexico formed the death metal band Intratil. They've since put out a couple of full lengths and several EPs that have a little bit of that Floridian riffing style in there. It's a little bit like Monstrosity. They throw in plenty of heavy grooves too. Castrator are a band from New York that formed in 2013. Their first lineup included Robin Mason of Durketa, Gruesome, Slag9, and Demonomacy, as well as Malika from Abnormality and Emasculator. Castrator were one of the first bands to lyrically push against the misogynistic themes prevalent in brutal death metal by writing about injustices towards women, including lyrical topics like honor killings. It's powerful stuff. Malika left Castrator in 2021 and formed Emasculator the same year, which is another all-woman project, but the lyrical themes were expanded to encompass some topics rarely explored in brutal death metal, including Hindu mythology. Emasculator is an international project now with a lot of different incredible women involved in that project, and you've got to hear that stuff too. Malika does the artwork for that project, really unique kind of artwork, really striking. Get rid of the AI stuff once again. We need some more sick artwork like this, so definitely check out that Emasculator stuff. How about some women from France? Yeah, I'm just going to do my best at pronouncing this one. Grenouille are 3 women playing brutal death metal in the vein of Brodequin. So they put out an EP through P2 in 2019 that is so ridiculously good that it's a crime that it's only been put on tape. I need this on CD. The blasting ferocity, insanely heavy guitar riffs, and filthy toilet-sounding vocals are all so ridiculously good that this isn't a want, it's a need. One comment I read under the stream on YouTube for this album was that it's the best band to ever come out of France. Now, I won't get carried away, there's a lot of great bands that have come from France, but it's seriously that good. It's ridiculously good. So, good luck finding a group of women or men putting out music this good. So I need this. I need more of it. Michelle, Sophie, Anne, this is amazing. Please put this on CD and please create more music. So there's a quick history of some of the greatest all-women death metal bands from throughout death metal history. So those are some of my favorites. There's certainly some that I left out of this list. So if there are any that we haven't discussed in this video, please let me know in the comments, both so I can see and so other people can learn about more of these incredible bands too. So stay tuned for the rest of this month, Women's Death Metal History Month, for more and more sick content to just learn about so many of the incredible women that have played this style of music. So keep it brutal, and I'll see you then very soon. Until next time.